Morning Drive, brought to you by Golf Pride.
A very good morning and welcome into Morning Drive on a Wednesday. Anna Whiteley with you. Delighted to be alongside Damon Hack, Paige McKenzie and Robert Dameron. Well, let's get you up to date with the latest news from the PGA Tour, as according to a report from Golf Digest, the Tour is planning to get their season back underway at Colonial Country Club in June. The Tour had originally targeted a resumption of play on May 21st at the Charles Schwab Challenge, but according to the report, will now aim to play that same event starting on June 11th. It is also expected that fans will not be allowed to attend their first event back in action. So, Robert Dameron, I'm going to come to you on this. How does this change your expectations in terms of the strength of field, also having no fans? How does this differ as opposed to a May start?
You know, normally if you ask me a question about the PGA Tour, I'm a little more certain of my answer. I mean, we're all just in the kind of guesswork phase of what's going on right now, the Tour moving the schedule for Colonial. But first, you asked the quality of the field. It's going to be strong. People are ready to go. I would be surprised if we didn't get the top 10 Tour players that were available to play that were in the tournament. And then you've also got which area, Colonial's in the Fort Worth area. So what will the restrictions be in that area as opposed to where the next tournament is and the next tournament is? So each tournament's going to look a little differently, but it is pretty certainly going to be without fans. I just can't imagine them trying to get everybody out again that early. It's going to be odd.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's nice to have dates in the diary and a target to look for, but there are still so many unknowns as we navigate through this COVID-19 period. But over to the European Tour, as they also made headlines yesterday, as according to a report from The Telegraph, Keith Pelley sent a memo to players warning them that their tour will have plenty of changes to be prepared for. According to the report, Pelley said the following, quote, "When we do resume playing, the schedule and the infrastructure of tournaments could look radically different from what you've been used to. Many of the things you've become accustomed to, such as top-class players' lounges or courtesy car services, will most likely assume a different appearance, if indeed they are present at all. Prize funds will also most likely be different. The reality is the pandemic is going to have a profound impact on the tour financially, as well as many of our partners, both in sponsorship and broadcast areas. We're looking at options such as A, multiple tournaments in the same location, B, 2 tournaments in the same week, or 3 in a fortnight, or C, 3 or 4 tournaments back to back in the UK with a 14-day quarantine period ahead of that to allow players not from the UK to come over and self-isolate in advance if that health requirement is still in place then." So, Damon Hack, I mean, it goes without saying Keith Pelley is taking this very seriously, and no doubt financially they've taken a huge hit. But what do you think the challenges that the European Tour are facing compared to other tours out there?
Tell you what, Anna, and you know this as well as anyone, the challenges are many, in part because this is a far-flung tour that's played across not just different, countries, but different continents. And you have different governments that are dealing with the pandemic in different ways, some being hit severely, some not so much. Then you have the fact that the tour in Europe has always been an underdog tour, smaller purses compared to the PGA Tour, and less amenities, let's be honest. I think the last few years we've seen the European Tour really raise its profile with the Rolex Series events, greater purses. We saw the effect that it had on a Tommy Fleetwood who won a Rolex Series event. You saw the effect, the tears, of emotion, the joy of a Tyrrell Hatton winning these big purses at the end of the year with the race to Dubai. But this is a global pandemic, and the reality is that the European Tour has many more challenges than the PGA Tour does, just because of the global reach of the pandemic and the global reach of this tour.
Yeah, I think you're right. And of course, it's widely recognized that the European Tour's pockets just aren't as deep as the PGA Tour. And golf is a business. And I think it's going to have to be baby steps just to get playing opportunities back for their players, broadcasting opportunities for their sponsors, and just get events back on the road and back on the European Tour to try and make up some of this huge financial deficit that they've been feeling. But Paige, when you look at what Keith Pelley said there in that memo to the players, suggesting that a lot of the amenities that they're going to be used to, players are often treated like VIPs out there. But as someone who has that kind of experience, what do you expect from a week at one of the big tournaments?
Exactly as Keith described. Great food and having these player lounges, guest passes to allow family and friends into those specific areas, the car pickups and drop-offs at the hotel. All of that is customary at certain events. But the reality is this reminds me very much of the financial crisis in the United States back in 2008, 2009, and how it hit the LPGA Tour when I was playing out there. You saw title sponsors going out of business. You saw many of them not fulfilling their obligations, their contractual obligations, either to players as individual sponsors and to tournaments. So ultimately, what came about of that is collectively, everybody had to come together and realize that we're all in this. And I think for the European Tour players, they're going to understand that they're just part of this, and they are going to be very cognizant of that and moving forward and knowing that this is nothing to complain about. The fact that they're even going to be able to host events is a good thing ultimately. But there's a lot of challenges along the way. And you saw what the LPGA ultimately had to do on their schedule. And they created the Founders Cup where the players played without a purse just to get a week on TV to keep the game relevant to their fans. And I don't know if the European Tour is in a position where that's even a possibility, but being creative in a time like this is definitely going to be necessary for them.
It's great for the LPGA Tour to have the visionary of Mike Whan and for him to do what he has done since that tough financial stretch in 2008 with the LPGA Tour has been fantastic. And we're going to have some foresight. Each smaller tour is going to have some foresight and some flexibility to succeed the way the LPGA has since then. And the LPGA, frankly, they'll be starting kind of from scratch too, and scratching their head. What's going on with European Tour? It's very similar to what any medium-sized or smaller business is going through in the United States. Golf is a business, like Anna said. It's entertainment for us, but there's dollars and cents behind it. So when you get to a tournament, it's not just that tournament. It's the structure around it. It's the sponsors around it. Or how are they going to be financially? What is the television? What's the broadcasting going to look like? Are the channels going to be able to broadcast the same way they were going to, because things are now jumbled around different weeks? The tournaments, like Keith Pelley said, may be tighter together. So, everyone's going to have to remain flexible. I think the players, they're going to be okay with it early. Players are a little spoiled, though. They're going to understand early, but after a handful of weeks playing for less money and no fans, no amenities, it might get a little tedious as well, Anna.
They are a little spoiled, but I think, as you say, at a time like this, that they recognise that the cuts are going to have to be made. And I reached out to multiple-time European Tour winner Thomas Pieters and his family, and he came over to the PGA Tour, but his passion and his dedication lies on the European Tour. And for them, they recognise that the tour necessarily isn't just about the purses. The charm of the European Tour is the travel, it's the over 50+ cultures, it's the languages, and that won't be taken away from them. And if they have to take a few hits along the way, then I think they just really appreciate Keith Pelley's honesty here and the deficit that they're facing financially. So we will be sure to keep you up to date with the progression of the PGA Tour, the European Tour, the LPGA, and all the tours across the board. But stay with us here on Morning Drive, and we'll keep you up to date with all the news.